For today's note from Naira, let's level set. I want to share with you my unique position and how the news of the day hits home for me on multiple levels. I'm Asian, of a sort. I'm raising Black babies, and I'm a Muslim woman. Now, we don't know for sure if the attacks in Atlanta will end up meeting the legal threshold of being a hate crime, and there's all this discussion about sex addiction being a motive. But neither of those facts can really be separated from what we know about how identity intersects with every aspect of our lives. It's not an accident that a young white man was able to access a gun, had a fetish about Asian women, signaled he was going to harm these working women, and was then taken into custody alive. That has been the pattern in the America we all live in. From the Oklahoma City bombing, to the killing of Black church members in South Carolina, to the shooting of brown people in a Texas Walmart, white domestic terrorism is rooted in a culture that sees skin color as the main measure of sympathy. We also see this narrative in mainstream media after every domestic terror attack perpetrated by a white man, a need to understand how and why the man crossed over into extremism. Today, we heard from the police he had a bad day. But I have yet to see a Black man be arrested for, say, a robbery, and the police say in a press conference, well, Mr. X lost his job. Systemic racism in the community stripped him of all economic opportunity, and gentrification pushed his family out of housing. So here's what we can do together. I think we just make a choice to recognize the humanity in all people. We share the very real stories of life of minorities in America, and by our words and actions, we make sure that we hold our culture and our government accountable to each and every one of us. The question for you now is, can we be in this together? Let me know.
Sure. Our colleague out in San Francisco, California, Ansar Hassan, it has done some reporting into how white law enforcement and white supremacy networks have correlated in their disparate treatment, not just of Asian Americans and Black people, but also that extra layer of religious identity when it comes to Muslim Americans. Here's Ansar with his reporting now.
Many civil rights advocates say one thing is clear from Tuesday night's fatal shooting in Atlanta.
The suspect was taken into custody unharmed.
That matters, says civil rights lawyer Zahra Bilu, because once again, it's an example of the difference in how law enforcement treat people of color.
Muslims are terrorists until proven innocent, and so we have not been afforded that right, innocent until proven guilty, in the same way that white suspects have been.
Bilu is the executive director of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the largest Muslim civil rights group in the United States. She says she's concerned when law enforcement use words like domestic terrorism because it allows them to bolster arguments for additional resources and additional authority. Many Muslim Americans say they've experienced firsthand when that happens, from mosque surveillance to extra security checks at airports.
For the Muslim community, what this creates is a tension around wanting to believe that we can call law enforcement to protect us, and yet wondering and worrying that we cannot, in fact, trust them to do that job.
Professor George Bisharat says it's also impacted how Arab and Muslim Americans organize politically.
You know, I think it has a chilling effect on people's exercise of their political rights. And their civil rights of freedom of speech, for example. And I think it breeds cynicism about law enforcement.
Many civil rights advocates point out that mass shootings have been disproportionately perpetrated by white men.
But according to the New York Times, mass shootings are overwhelmingly a Black thing. Likewise, most of the violence directed towards Asians is from Black people.
Yet the lack of understanding and the media's framing of American Muslims around terrorism has led to more violence against those communities.
The solution has to lie with communities to say we will not tolerate hate ideologies, we will not tolerate bias motivation, and we will root this out ourselves.
Except they won't do that. Instead, they will continue to claim that white people, law enforcement, and America are our greatest threat. And why would you expect anything different from the Council on American Islamic Relations?